Hi, this is Dr. Jarrod Spencer, sports psychologist, and I'm thrilled to share this program with you called The 5 Hurdles, How Athletes Typically Fall and Can Rise Again. This program is designed to help you understand the 5 things that I see again and again and again as a sports psychologist that trip up most athletes. That essentially, if you're gonna be in sports long enough, it's very likely that you're gonna experience at least one of these 5 hurdles, if not all 5 of them. And my sincere hope for you is that somehow, some way, during your athletic journey, you wouldn't experience a fall from grace because of one of these 5 hurdles where you fell and you weren't able to rise again. So it's my intention here now to explain to you how the mind works in relation to these 5 hurdles and what you can do to avoid being tripped up. The 5 hurdles all have their origins back to something called the flooded preconscious mind. The flooded preconscious mind. Allow me to explain. If you think of the mind as an iceberg floating in the ocean, everything you see above the waterline is what we refer to as your conscious mind. What you're consciously aware of, the sound of my voice, the environment around you. But everything below the waterline is the subconscious mind. The waterline itself represents your psychological defenses. That's your mind's ability to block out what needs to be blocked out and stay focused and concentrating on what needs to be given attention at the moment. The subconscious mind is made up of 3 layers. The bottom layer of that iceberg is the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is that part of the mind where memories are stored that are very difficult to retrieve. They're there because it's either very outdated, useless information, or maybe emotionally charged information, traumas and dramas, or maybe even things that occurred early in your life. The next layer of the mind is called the ex-conscious mind. And the ex-conscious mind is a phrase that I coined to describe that part of the mind where memories are stored that could be recalled, but they're outside of your immediate awareness, and they're not right there in the background of your mind. An example would be, tell me a little bit about your 10th birthday. I mean, I'm sure you could think about it eventually, but it would be difficult to do. Other things in the ex-conscious mind would be early childhood games. Maybe the first time you played baseball or the first time you played basketball. But those memories are stored back in the ex-conscious mind. We can recall them with some good attention and conversation. But the most important part of the subconscious mind is called the preconscious mind. And the preconscious mind is essentially the back burner. It's that part of the mind where memories are stored that could be easily recalled, but they're outside of your immediate awareness. And so examples of times when you are in the preconscious mind mode would be when you're driving in the car and thoughts just randomly come to you. Or maybe you put your head on the pillow and now you're randomly thinking about all these different things that happened during the day. Or maybe even you are out for a long run and you just get your best thinking done when you're out there running. Whether you're running, whether you're trying to fall asleep, whether you're driving in the car, these are times when the material in the preconscious mind is more accessible. I want you to imagine as though there's a rectangular box around that top third of the iceberg, in the bottom part of the iceberg rather. I want you to imagine as though there's a rectangular box defining the preconscious zone in the top third of the iceberg that's below the waterline. And in there's a bunch of red dots. Those red dots represent your ongoing issues, unresolved conflicts, traumas, dramas, stressors, essentially, in your preconscious mind. And when it's flooded, meaning there's a lot of those in there, that's when you walk around feeling edgy, cranky, and irritable, but you might not know why. When you just sense that you're not quite yourself. It's because there's a lot of little issues in the preconscious mind, which individually may not seem like that big of a deal, but collectively, it's like a soda can that's shaken up and the tension is building and building. When the preconscious mind gets flooded with a lot of these incidents that are going on in your life, it sends a warning signal through your mind, through your body, that you're under stress. And as most individuals endure stress, the psychological defenses work hard to keep that content protected and out so the rest of the world doesn't see you emotionally unravel. But even the best athletes over time have their psychological defenses beginning to wear down. You've probably noticed that in one of your seasons, that as the season rolls along, you get more and more mentally fatigued. This is especially true if you're a deconditioned athlete physically, because the essence of sports is very simply this: break down your opponent physically, and then you'll begin to break them down mentally. Their psychological defenses break down, and whatever's in the preconscious mind is more likely to come out, that it's more likely to expose itself, and the individual will begin to compete at a lesser level because their mind would actually give in to wanting to protect the content more than wanting to win. Inside that preconscious mind, those loaded issues, those red dots of traumas and dramas, unresolved conflicts, ongoing stressors, they're often negative emotions, such as anger, which is really hurt, depression, which is hurt held inward, anxiety, which is fear of the unknown, or hate, which is feeling threatened by. These strong emotions in sports, where we are taught to suck it up, deal with it, don't whine, don't complain, I don't want to hear about it. But they have to go somewhere, and they reside there in the preconscious mind. It's not only negative emotions in the preconscious mind, but also positive emotions. So, for example, if an individual wins a big game and they play really well, all of that excitement and joy and enthusiasm is a positive stressor. And the mind wants to process it, and it could occupy a lot of space in the preconscious mind. It's one reason why when I see a college football team in the fall win a big game, I often say they're very vulnerable for the next game and very likely to get picked off by an even lesser team, because the preconscious mind is flooded even from the positive stressors. The reporters, the fans, people on campus talking to you, taking your mind far away from the technique and the process that's needed to win. So when the emotions are in the preconscious mind, and they're very charged, and an individual begins to feel the stress, they begin to experience a dynamic psychologically that could easily lead to one of the 5 hurdles. The 5 hurdles are these: insomnia, anxiety attacks, decreased energy, misguided tensions, and loneliness. I want to unpack for you now each of the 5 hurdles and give you some skills so that you can keep your preconscious mind clear and avoid these specific 5 hurdles. And if you can't outright avoid them, then hopefully some of the other skills I'll give you will at least help you manage them. The first hurdle is insomnia. Insomnia is tossing and turning in the middle of the night, thinking about things. Maybe it's difficulty falling asleep, that's sleep onset insomnia, or maybe it's sleep maintenance insomnia, which is difficulty maintaining your sleep in the middle of the night. Whatever it may be, you as an individual are tossing and turning, thinking about things from the preconscious mind. One reason this is likely to occur as an athlete is because you're so busy. From the time you open your eyes to the time you get back in bed, it's often go, 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 go. And there's very little time to even think about those stressors, those experiences in your day, or try to resolve them. And so they creep up on you in the middle of the night because you see your conscious mind goes to sleep, but your preconscious mind is very much going to work. During sleep, it wants to resolve those issues in the preconscious mind and emotionally disarm them and sink them into the ex-conscious mind, thus making the mind even clearer. When you go to sleep at night, you are going into what's called delta brainwave state. The brainwave state you're in now is beta. Alpha is when you're relaxing on the couch watching TV. Theta is when you're falling in and out of sleep, and then delta is sound asleep. And so you really want to have good deep sleep, good delta sleep from delta 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 being the deepest level of sleep. But unfortunately, insomnia can rob you of that deep restorative sleep. And as an athlete, it's very important that you get that deep sleep. And so a few techniques that I encourage you to consider to help you have better sleep and avoid insomnia are these. If insomnia occurs, stay down. Don't get out of the bed. Imagine as though you're a heavyweight boxer and you're knocked down on the canvas and the trainer's yelling from the corner, stay down, stay down. If it's going to be worse if you actually get up because you're in a bad state and that boxer's likely to knock you down again. And so it's like that in sleep, that it's better to stay down. Why? Because it's better to stay down lying in your bed, at least in alpha theta brainwave state, getting 8 hours of that compared to getting up in the middle of the night and getting into beta brainwave state and only getting 4 hours of maybe delta sleep. That once you get up, you've thrown off your circadian rhythm, which is that optimal time each day that you would fall asleep and wake up based upon your circadian clock. And so you want to keep that rhythm as best as you can. And so staying down will help you to do that. So it's about getting into the bed and just keeping your mind focused on something positive, maybe a beautiful image of a Caribbean beach or mountain retreat, whatever it may be, but create an image in your head to help you stay down. Slow down your breathing to help you stay down. Think only about certain topics while you're staying down. For example, put limitations to say, I will not think about sports or academics while I lie here. I might only think about spiritual matters or how blessed I am from God or something very positive along those lines. Also, another great technique to help with insomnia is consistency of your sleep. That it's very important to try to catch the consistency of your sleep. That you want to make sure you ideally fall asleep every night at the same time and your body will get used to that rhythm. And you want to try to stay down all the way through the same time when you wake up each morning. Now, I know that may be hard for some athletes because you have 6 a.m.s or maybe you have an away game and you're getting in late. As best you can, keep your rhythm consistent each and every night. Some techniques to also help would be to keep your room temperature at the optimal sleeping temperature. You might be surprised to know that that temperature is actually 60 degrees. The optimal room temperature while you're awake is about 68 degrees. Your room might not be that cold at 60 degrees typically, but if you want to get a better night's sleep, according to the research, this would definitely help. The proof is that if you ever go to a hotel and spend the night, when you walk in the room, typically it feels really cold because they know that you're going to get a better night's sleep if it's colder and they want you to have a great night's sleep while you're there. Music can be an important part to also help you fall asleep and combat sleep onset insomnia. That rather than listen to music that gets your heart rate going like you would before a big game, that you might try listening to slow, relaxing music without any words in it. For example, there's a pianist named Danny Wright, and his relaxing piano music is excellent alpha brainwave music. Or you might want to try some music like from a spa. That's more trancey, that's more in the theta brainwave state. But that kind of music can help relax the brain, transition you from beta to alpha to theta, and eventually push your brain into delta sleep. Hopefully, these techniques can make a difference in combating the first hurdle of insomnia. The second hurdle is anxiety attacks. And you might be surprised to know that over 40 million Americans will experience an impairment because of an anxiety attack. But of the 40 million that would experience this, only 4 million would receive treatment. Anxiety attacks are essentially a very scary phenomenon that could feel a little bit like you're having a heart attack. A tightness in your chest. You might have a profuse sweating, a dryness in your mouth. Your hands could get cold and clammy. Your heart might be racing. Some people feel like it's beating so fast. There might be a feeling of panic, like you just want to get out of the room, just run and get away. These symptoms are coming from what we call the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response is essentially a protective mechanism wherein if an individual were to experience a significant external threat, such as a saber-toothed tiger way back in the day, that their body would jump into this mode where they would be able to either fight the tiger or run away. And so the heart rate begins to beat very fast to pump the blood. The blood begins to distribute to different parts of the body to either help the legs run or protect the internal organs. The body begins to sweat so that if somebody were attacking the body, you would be slippery and able to escape, and also to help cool the body off. But essentially, with anxiety attacks today for individual athletes, it's not likely that there's that external threat. The threat instead is more in your mind, and that the preconscious mind gets so flooded, so stressed, that when you experience the anxiety attack, it's almost as though it's a warning sign to you that there's just too much going on in the preconscious mind, that you're emotionally overextended or overwhelmed, and you might not fully even be aware of it. It can be a scary thing to have a panic attack. What can you do to manage it? The most important thing you can do is to try to breathe. Slow down your breathing. Allow your breathing to be slow and rhythmic. Why? Because the natural inclination of the panic attack or the anxiety attack is going to be that your breathing is going to be short and shallow and fast. And if you can slow down your breathing, you're going to bring all the oxygen that your body's going to need to pump out from your heart throughout the body. And in doing so, your heart rate will begin to drop. And if your heart rate begins to drop, you're going to begin to override the extreme sympathetic nervous system phenomenon that's going on. And so it really goes back to your breathing. Visualization could also help, that you can begin to imagine yourself in the quote unquote happy place, wherever that may be, but imagine yourself somewhere else in a very relaxing venue. Another important part of this is to control your thinking. It's very normal and natural before treatment for an anxiety attack for an individual to have thoughts like, uh-oh, what's happening? What if I'm having a heart attack? What if other people notice? What if it gets worse? What if I go crazy? What if I lose control? Instead, I encourage you with thoughts like, I've been through this before. This is just an anxiety attack. I can ride out the symptoms. I need to just slow down my breathing. In about a minute or two, it'll begin to subside and I'm going to feel better. In about 20 minutes, the whole thing will likely have gone away. And so just focus on the relaxation, focus on letting the tension leave my muscles. The more you can have relaxing thoughts, the better off you're going to be at managing the anxiety attacks. Another great technique to manage this is to change location. That you may find that if you step out of the particular room or venue that you're in, it may help a lot. So if you're in the locker room, you're having an anxiety attack, maybe you want to go to another room. Or maybe if you're on the bench, you want to go back into the locker room. Wherever it may be, changing locations can sometimes help. What's most important, though, is recognition that the preconscious mind is flooded, and that long-term treatment for the preconscious mind would be to help have the preconscious mind be clear. How do we do that? Really, that goes back to the 5-step process of awareness, process, communing, integrate, and performing. In essence, I'm encouraging you with really talking about that stuff in the preconscious mind as a way to clear it out. The third hurdle is decreased energy level. And what I'm talking about is emotional energy level. That when the preconscious mind is flooded and an individual feels overextended and overwhelmed, it can cause the mind and the psychological defenses in particular to work very hard at trying to keep it all together, to not allowing all that stuff to be shown to the world. And that's emotionally draining. Evidence of this would very simply be the opposite. If you've ever gone on vacation and had a very relaxing time and then re-engaged your daily life and schedule, you probably felt much better, a little bit more of a pep in the step, a little bit more witty or fun or relaxed. Your body maybe felt even looser and your energy felt higher. In sports, you can sometimes see this when individuals come into preseason practice, there's a lot of excitement and they're very motivated. However, by the time midseason rolls around, their preconscious minds are now flooded and they are sometimes beginning to feel drained and beginning to even look towards the end of the season. I often say to athletes, monitor your emotional energy by using the scale of 0 to 100, 100 being the highest and 0 being the lowest. That if you could rank your energy, in particular your emotional energy, which is that amount of energy you have to deal with the emotional, mental, psychological stressors that are occurring in your world. I often say to athletes, if your energy's in the 90s, that's an A, in the 80s, it's a B, in the 70s, it's a C, in the 60s, it's a D, and anything below 60 is F'ville. If an athlete's energy is in the 80s or the 90s emotionally, they're generally going to have great performance. But if your energy is in the 60s or 70s, you're already drained. And so when you go out on the field to battle or on the court to battle, what's going to happen is that you're going to hit your tipping point even quicker. The tipping point is that magical number that only you really know on that scale 0 to 100. But when you hit it, you begin to quickly unravel. Negative thinking creeps in and you're less than your best. The problem for many athletes is this. They give so much of their best to their academics and their athletics, but when they come home, they are wiped out. Their energy might even be 60 or below. And so that's when they're with their family, whom they love the most, but they often treat the worst. And this is compounded by many parents who often give their best to their job during the day, but by 7 or 8 o'clock at night, they're also at their worst. And relationships can be strained and fractured. And so I encourage you, because your heart is really for them, that you want to protect those relationships by better managing your emotional energy. How do we do that? One thing that I really encourage you to do is to first be aware of what drains you of your energy. And if there are things out there that are draining you of your energy, I really encourage you to put some time and attention at resolving that conflict. For example, if there's tension between you and your coach, I really encourage you to talk to him or her, address it, work it through, because as soon as you can resolve that tension, you're going to remove one of the large obstacles from the preconscious mind, and consequently, you're not going to have that much stress and you're going to feel better. Your energy is going to actually rise. And so what is draining you? Go ahead and even write them down on a piece of paper. Conversely, what fills you up? What gives you emotional energy? What are your hobbies, your interests, things that you do for fun that give you energy? And who are those friends, those people in your life that you can go hang out with and they make you laugh? It's as though when you're with them, they don't drain you, they fill you with energy. And how can you spend more time with that person or those people? Understanding what drains you and what fills you up is an important part of emotional energy conservation. And the more you can conserve your emotional energy and keep it higher in the 80s or the 90s, the more likely you're going to have great performance on the field and fewer traumas and dramas off of it. The fourth hurdle is misguided tensions. And what I mean by misguided tensions is that there's tension inside of every person, and unfortunately at times for some athletes, it comes out in inappropriate ways, in misguided ways. An example would be the athlete that is very tense, very upset, and for some reason, they throw a punch and they hit somebody. Or maybe it comes out regarding alcohol and they use alcohol as a way to release the tension, or drugs to release the tension. Or maybe they're so tense inside, so stressed inside, and so they go to unhealthy eating habits. And you're eating a lot of junk food as a way to help alleviate some of that tension. There are other individuals out there as well that would turn to sex, and they would use sex as a way to release the tension in very inappropriate ways. Or gambling is another option. And some people will gravitate to gambling as a way of releasing tension inside. Road rage can be another one. Going onto the internet and spending time on sites that are inappropriate could be yet another. And you can probably think of more and more and more. Essentially, these modalities that are often being utilized for some degree of pleasure, but mostly to release tension inside, can be misguided, can be problematic, and so many athletes fall. And one of the most common of the misguided tensions is actually anger, that an individual explodes somehow, some way on the court, on the field, on the mat, and somehow, some way, it's that anger that comes out in misguided ways that begins to take away from that individual's character. What do we do about this? How do we deal better with this? Well, one of the first steps is to be aware. What is your vice? How is it likely for you that the tension might come out in a misguided way? For some individuals, you need to be even more aware of the physical symptoms of your body that are developing as a sign of the tension. For example, did you know that 90% of all doctor's visits are for stress-related ailments or complaints? That's significant. If you're paying attention to the warning signs of your body, you might be able to catch the likelihood that you're in a vulnerable position and the tension might come out in a misguided way if the right venue presented itself. I encourage you with 2 key pathways out to release that tension. One is to have an outlet. I mean, you've got to have an outlet, a way to let out the tension. But for many athletes, they're so busy competing that they don't actually have an outlet. They don't have a hobby, something they do for fun, something that they do for no other reason than pure enjoyment. You've got to have a way to have an outlet. One former Olympic coach told me that he required all of his Olympians to have a significant hobby. For example, fly fishing, something that the individual would just do for pure fun and enjoyment. If you don't have a way to let out, if you don't have an outlet, it's likely that the tension inside is just going to build and build and build, and you're going to be in a very vulnerable position. The second way is to work out. Working out, which you love as an athlete, helps you work out the tension. I mean, you like to work out because physically you'll look better and compete better, but at another level, you're working out because mentally you feel better and the tension inside is able to come out. But I encourage you not just with working out more, but also encourage you with working out your mind. Working out your mind. I mean, are you doing that? Are you taking the time to talk about your thoughts and feelings? Are you taking the time to think and to process? Are you getting some solitude time? Are you getting opportunities to write in a journal? Are you having heartfelt conversations with people? Are you in a small group of individuals that are getting together to talk about things and problem solve and encourage each other? Working out the mind, and of course I'm biased to sports psychology and the whole path, working out the mind can help release that tension inside in a healthier manner. The 5th hurdle is loneliness. For many athletes today, particularly our 15 to 25-year-old athletes today, what I hear is that they are more technologically connected than ever before. They've got so many friends on Facebook, but privately, as a generation, they're more emotionally disconnected than any generation before them. That they've got very few relationships that go very deep, where they can talk about their thoughts and feelings, that they can talk about their inner reality. And consequently, they feel lonely. Many athletes will say at some point that they feel like nobody really gets it. Nobody really understands me. Nobody really can get what I'm going through. My situation's so unique. I just don't have anybody that I could really turn to. That's a tragedy. And sadly, many of the coaches and the parents who ought to be there in these roles are themselves overextended, emotionally drained, less available. And so we've got to find some way for you as an athlete to avoid the hurdle of loneliness by cultivating more meaningful relationships, by cultivating opportunities for you to really connect with people at a deeper level. Coaching, counseling, therapy, psychology is a beautiful path that enables an individual to connect with another human being who's willing to spend time with them and really listen and empathize and validate and support and encourage an individual. I really want you to consider connecting with somebody, a professional in that role. And the beauty of that type of relationship is that it's confidential, it's private. And so what's said there stays there, and it doesn't trickle back out into your life. And so that professional dynamic can do wonders. And I obviously see that each and every day with so many athletes at all levels. I encourage you with seeking that type of relationship. I also want to encourage you with small groups and maybe even going one step further to help battle loneliness, but to connect with God. That according to research, 92% of Americans believe in God, and that over 50% of Americans are talking to God, are praying to God at least once a day. One of the great ways to battle loneliness is to connect with God and to talk with Him each and every day. A third way to help battle loneliness is to get connected in a small group. Small groups, in particular, small group Bible studies such as Fellowship of Christian Athletes studies and huddles on high school and college campuses are one great option where somebody can connect with like-minded athletes in a small venue where they can connect and share and talk and have fellowship. If you're not connected with that, I might encourage you to check out such programs. This can make a significant difference in battling loneliness. Ultimately, I don't want you to get tripped up by any of these 5 hurdles. But the reality is that at some point in your athletic journey, it's likely that you will stumble over one of these hurdles. But it's my hope that you will be able to rise again because you understand the hurdles. You understand some things that you could do to bounce back from them. And you understand that essentially, at its origin, these 5 hurdles have a flooded preconscious mind, and that if you would engage in the process of talking more about the stuff in your preconscious mind, working that stuff through, working out your mind, that you might find that your preconscious mind is clear. And if the preconscious mind is clear, you will feel better. You'll perform better. You'll thrive as an athlete, and the world would see all the amazing things that are inside of you. All of the athleticism, all of the intelligence, all of the wit, the humor, the creativity, the love. It's all in you. At times it just gets blocked from flowing from deep inside of you because your preconscious mind is just too flooded. And then worse yet, you trip up over one of the hurdles and the world sees that. Strive to have the right conditions. Strive to keep your preconscious mind clear. If you can do this, you will be amazed at what you can do and how well you'll be able to do it.